Step into the darkness with witness shadows. Every shadow has a witness, and every witness has a story they've been too afraid to tell. Welcome to Witness Shadows, your ultimate destination for true horror stories and disturbing stories that linger long after the screen goes black. Whether you're looking for scary stories to sleep to, or chilling stalking stories that make you double-check your locks, our collection of true stories is curated to haunt your subconscious. I answered a knock, but the voice was already inside my house. This happened in late October a few years ago, when I agreed to stay on my Aunt Eileen's old house for a fortnight while the probate mess was being sorted. The place was in a village called Blackthorn Moor, up in North Yorkshire, the sort of village that never looks cheerful even in daylight. I'd only been there once as a child, and all I really remembered was a row of stone houses, a tiny shop with a faded lottery sign in the window, and a lot of wind. My mom hated the place and used to call it the end of the world with a postcode. At the time, I thought she was just being dramatic. Looking back, I honestly think she was trying to warn me without saying anything directly. I got there just after 4 in the afternoon, which in October already feels too late. The sky had that dirty gray color to it, like wet ash, and the moor behind the village looked flat and endless, with the mist beginning to drag across it in strips. Aunt Eileen's house was on Ashcombe Lane, a narrow terrace right at the edge of the village, where the road more or less gave up and turned into rough track. There were 6 houses in the row. 2 looked occupied. One had boards over the downstairs windows. The others had curtains drawn so tightly it felt less like privacy and more like people trying not to be seen. That bothered me straight away, though I couldn't have told you why. It wasn't just that the lane was quiet. Plenty of villages are quiet. It was the way it felt paused, as if everyone had heard something and decided to stay inside until it passed. The house itself was exactly the kind of place people call charming when they're not the ones sleeping in it. Narrow hall, low ceilings, damp patch above the stairs, old electric fire in the sitting room, kitchen bolted on at the back, like an afterthought. Everything smelt faintly of coal dust and old paper. My aunt hadn't lived there for years, not properly. She'd left in a hurry after some fall or breakdown or row with the neighbors, depending on which family member you asked. And after that, nobody really liked discussing her. I only took the keys because I worked remotely, needed somewhere cheap to disappear for a bit, and thought 2 weeks alone in the countryside might actually do me good. That was the stupid part, really. I thought quiet would help. I unlocked the front door, carried my overnight bag in, then went back for the rest of my things from the car. As I was shutting the boot, I happened to look across the lane. There was an empty house directly opposite Eileen's, another stone terrace place, but in much worse shape. The front garden was all nettles and broken slate, and one of the upstairs windows had no curtain at all. I noticed that because there was someone standing there, not moving, just standing. At first, I thought it was a coat hung on something, or maybe one of those cardboard cutouts you sometimes see in charity shops. It was that indistinct. But then I had the clear, horrible feeling you get when your mind catches up before your body does. It was the outline of a person, very thin, head slightly bent, facing directly toward me. I just stood there with my hand on the boot lid, staring across the lane. I can still remember trying to make sense of it without wanting to look frightened, which is ridiculous because there was nobody there to impress. After maybe 2 seconds, a gust of wind came through the street, and something loose on the roof clattered, and I flinched. I looked away for literally a moment. When I looked back, the window was empty. That should have been nothing. Honestly, if I'd heard anyone else tell me that, I'd have said they misread a shadow. I told myself exactly that. Empty house, bad light, long drive, overactive imagination. But I didn't like how quickly I rushed to explain it. That always means some part of you already knows it unsettled you. I got the rest of my bags inside and shut the door behind me with more force than I meant to. The latch clicked and the sound went right through the house. It was strange how much that comforted me. I went from room to room switching lights on, partly to make the place look less miserable, partly because I wanted every corner visible. Upstairs there were 2 bedrooms and a box room, all colder than downstairs by several degrees. One of the bedroom windows looked straight across at the abandoned house. I noticed that and immediately pulled the curtain halfway across without really thinking about it. But then everything seemed fine, like nothing would happen. That's how these things get you. I made tea, unpacked enough clothes to feel settled, and rang my friend Nisha while I stood in the kitchen waiting for the kettle to boil. I even joked about the place. Told her it looked like the sort of house where you'd find Victorian teeth in a jar or a priest hidden in the pantry. She laughed and asked if I was winding myself up on purpose. I said I was more worried about the damp than ghosts. I remember saying that exactly, and I wish I didn't, because about 10 seconds later I heard a knock from somewhere upstairs. Just one. Not loud, not dramatic, more like a small, firm tap on wood. I stopped speaking mid-sentence. Nisha asked what was wrong, and I said, "Hang on, I think something's fallen over." Even then I didn't want to sound stupid. I put the phone on speaker and went to the bottom of the stairs, listening. Nothing. The house was silent again. I honestly thought maybe I'd imagined it. Old places settle, pipes knock, birds get in lofts. There's always an explanation if you want one badly enough. I went upstairs anyway, checking each room with the kind of forced calm people use when they're trying not to let fear settle properly in the chest. Both bedrooms were empty. The box room was empty. No open windows, no loose furniture, nothing on the floor. But in the front bedroom, the one facing the lane, the curtain I'd half drawn was now open again by a few inches. That detail sounds so minor when I say it now, but I knew I hadn't left it like that. I knew it. The gap was narrow, just enough to see the abandoned house opposite and the bare upstairs window staring back. For one stupid second, I had the strongest urge to lean forward and check whether someone was there again. I didn't. I just pulled the curtain fully shut this time and stepped back so quickly, I bumped into the chest of drawers behind me. Nisha was still on the speaker downstairs, her voice echoing up faintly, asking if I was alive. I laughed because that was easier than admitting my hands had started shaking. I went back down, made some excuse about being tired from the drive, and ended the call. Then I checked the front door lock, then the back door, then the little bolt on the kitchen window, even though it was painted shut. It was only while I was doing that I realized the lane outside had gone almost completely dark. Not because it was especially late, just because every house had drawn itself closed. No lamps in the front windows, no silhouettes moving behind curtains, no telly flickering blue through the glass. Even the occupied houses looked dead. The only thing visible was the abandoned place opposite, its upstairs window pale and open to the evening like a blind eye. I answered a knock, but the voice was already inside my house. I made tea I didn't drink, turned on the television for noise, and sat on the edge of the sofa telling myself over and over that I was being ridiculous. New house, new sounds, strange village, that was all. But from where I sat, I could still feel that upstairs window across the lane, as if it had weight somehow, as if attention could travel through glass. And what I didn't expect was how quickly that feeling changed from vague discomfort into something much worse. Because at 6:30, while there was still just enough light left to see the front path, someone knocked at the door of the village shop next door to the off-license. And I heard a woman inside say, very clearly, "Don't answer it. Not yet." That was the first moment I thought maybe the village already knew something I didn't. I didn't sleep properly that first night. Not even close. It wasn't one of those dramatic, wide-awake, staring at the ceiling kinds of nights. It was worse than that. The kind where you drift off in short bursts and keep snapping back awake, never fully sure what pulled you out of it. Every time I opened my eyes, the room looked slightly different. Not in a way I could point to, just off. Like I'd missed something while I was asleep. I told myself it was just unfamiliar surroundings. New place, new sounds, thin walls, old pipes. All the usual things you say to yourself so you don't sit there in the dark convincing yourself something's wrong. But even then, I kept noticing things that didn't quite fit. The first time I woke up properly, I was sure I'd heard someone walking upstairs. Slow, deliberate steps, not creaking floorboards shifting with temperature, actual weight moving from one side of the landing to the other. I lay there holding my breath, listening, It stopped the second I focused on it. That was the pattern. Anytime I tried to listen properly, everything went silent. I remember thinking, you're not doing this. You're not going to be one of those people who scares themselves over nothing. So I forced myself to turn over, pull the duvet up, and go back to sleep. And eventually, I must have. When I woke again, it was early morning. Gray light through the curtains, the kind that doesn't really feel like morning at all. For a few seconds, everything seemed normal, quiet, still, exactly how an empty house should be. Then I noticed the door. I'd left my bedroom door closed. I knew I had. I'm funny about that. I always shut doors at night. It's just a habit. Now it was open, not wide, just enough that I could see the dark line of the hallway beyond it. And I had this strange, creeping thought that I hadn't opened it, that something else had. I sat up slowly, just staring at it, waiting for something to move on the other side. Nothing did. The house was completely still again. After a minute or two, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and got up, telling myself I must have left it like that without remembering. That's the thing. You can explain almost anything if you're willing to doubt yourself first. I went downstairs, made coffee, and tried to reset the whole feeling. Morning helps with that. Everything looks less threatening in daylight. The lane outside was visible again, though still quiet. One of the houses had a car parked out front now, but I didn't see anyone come or go. I deliberately didn't look at the abandoned house opposite. I just avoided it. Like if I ignored it, it would stop being relevant. The kitchen felt slightly warmer once the kettle had boiled, and I stood there for a while, just holding the mug, letting normal routine settle back in. I even put some music on from my phone, just to fill the silence. It helped for a bit. Then I noticed the back door. It was slightly ajar, not wide open, just not shut properly. That didn't make sense. I checked it twice the night before. I remembered sliding the bolt across, even pushing against it to make sure it was secure. Now the bolt was still in place, but the door itself had a small gap, maybe half an inch, like it hadn't caught fully in the frame. A cold draft was slipping through. I walked over slowly and pushed it closed. It clicked into place properly this time. I tested it, harder than necessary, just to be sure. It didn't budge. Old house, I said out loud, like that settled it. But my voice sounded strange in there, too loud, like it didn't belong. I stood there for another second, staring at the door, and that's when I saw it. On the floor, just inside the threshold, were faint marks in the dirt. At first I thought it was just mud tracked in from my shoes, but when I crouched down and looked properly, I realized they weren't mine. They were wrong, too narrow, not shaped like proper footprints, more like long, uneven impressions, as if something had pressed into the floor without the structure of a real foot. The marks led inward from the door, across the kitchen tiles, then onto the worn wood of the hallway. And they didn't stop. They continued, one after the other, all the way toward the stairs. I remember just kneeling there, staring at them, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I actually checked my own shoes, turning them over, comparing the soles. It was pointless. They didn't match, not even close. I must have stepped in something, I muttered, though I already knew that wasn't true. What I didn't understand, what I couldn't understand, was how they'd gotten there at all. The door had been locked. I followed the marks slowly into the hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. The house was completely silent again. No movement, no sound, just me and those impressions leading ahead of me like something had walked in and expected me to follow. They reached the base of the stairs, and then they started going up. That's where I hesitated. I don't know why that was the moment it really hit me. Maybe because going upstairs felt like crossing some kind of line. Downstairs still felt manageable, connected to the outside, to daylight, to the idea that I could just leave if I needed to. Upstairs felt enclosed, cut off, but I couldn't just ignore it. I told myself that. You need to check. There's an explanation. There has to be. So I put one foot on the first step. The wood creaked under my weight, loud in the quiet. I waited, listening for any reaction. Nothing. Another step, then another. The marks continued up the stairs ahead of me, faint but visible. I followed them all the way to the landing, my chest tightening more with each step, like something inside me already knew I wasn't going to like what I found. At the top, they turned toward the front bedroom. the same one facing the abandoned house. The door was open. I was sure I'd left it closed after checking it the night before. That detail came back to me immediately, sharp and certain. I could picture myself pulling it shut. Now it stood slightly ajar, just like my bedroom door had been earlier. I didn't move straight away. I just stood there on the landing, staring at it, listening. And for a second, just a second, I thought I heard something inside. Not movement, breathing, soft, slow, like someone trying not to be heard. I froze. Every instinct in me said, don't go in there. Just leave. Go downstairs, get your things, get out of the house. Nothing was stopping me. I could have done it. But then the rational part of my brain kicked in again. You're tired. You're on edge. You're imagining things. I forced myself forward, one step at a time. I pushed the door open with my fingertips. The room was empty, exactly as I'd left it. Curtains half drawn, bed untouched, nothing out of place, except the window. The curtain had been pulled back again, not fully, just enough to expose a narrow strip of glass. And through that gap, you could see directly across the lane, to the upstairs window of the abandoned house. I didn't want to look. I really didn't. But something about the way the curtain had been positioned so precisely, like it was meant to frame that view, made it impossible not to. So I stepped closer, and I looked. At first, there was nothing, just the empty window across the road, pale in the morning light. Then, slowly, as my eyes adjusted, I realized there was something different, something I hadn't noticed before. On the inside of the glass, on my side of the window, just below the gap in the curtain, there were 3 faint lines, scratched into the condensation, parallel, uneven, like someone had dragged their fingers down the glass from the inside. I stared at them, my reflection faintly visible behind the marks, my face pale, eyes fixed on something I couldn't quite process. I hadn't made those. I hadn't even been close enough to the window to touch it. And the worst part was, the condensation wasn't there anywhere else, just in that one narrow strip, like someone had been standing there long enough to breathe against the glass, watching the house across the lane, or watching me. I didn't move for a long time after seeing those marks on the window. I just stood there, staring at them, trying to force my brain into some kind of explanation that made sense. Condensation, temperature difference, old glass, anything. But none of it explained why the rest of the window was clear, or why those 3 lines looked so deliberate. I remember lifting my hand, slowly, almost without thinking, and placing my fingers against the glass where the marks were. It was freezing. Not just cold from the outside air, properly cold, like the chill had seeped into the pain itself. I pulled my hand back straight away, more out of instinct than anything else. And that's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The marks didn't line up with where my hand had been. They were lower, too low to be made by someone standing normally. I actually crouched slightly, trying to match the angle, and that was when a horrible thought slipped into my head without asking permission. Someone made those while standing right here, but lower than they should be. I stood back up immediately, heart starting to hammer now in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. That calm, rational voice I'd been relying on since I arrived, it just disappeared, replaced by something much more honest, something that knew I wasn't alone in that house. I turned away from the window too quickly, nearly knocking into the edge of the bed, and headed straight for the door. I didn't check the rest of the room. I didn't look under anything. I just wanted out of there. The landing felt colder than before. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was the silence. Not normal quiet, something heavier, like the house itself was listening. I moved toward the stairs, telling myself to stay calm, to just get downstairs, get outside, and figure out what to do next. But halfway down, I stopped because I heard it again. Footsteps, not above me this time, behind me, on the landing. Slow, measured, one step, then another. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Every instinct in me locked up at once, like my body had decided before I did that looking would make it real. The steps continued, soft but clear, crossing the landing, stopping just behind me. I swear, I could feel something there, not touching me, not breathing on me, just there. Close enough that if I leaned back even slightly, I'd bump into it. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I tried to breathe quietly, like that would somehow stop it noticing me. Then, right next to my ear, a voice. barely above a whisper. You saw me. I don't remember deciding to run. One second I was frozen on the stairs, and the next I was moving, fast, clumsy, nearly slipping as I rushed down into the hallway. I hit the bottom step harder than I meant to and stumbled forward, catching myself against the wall. The house was silent again, completely silent, like nothing had happened. I turned slowly, forcing myself to look up the staircase. There was nothing there. Empty landing, open doors, still air. But I knew what I'd heard, and worse, I knew it had been right behind me. I didn't waste any more time after that. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door, my keys from the side table, and went straight outside without even thinking about whether I should lock up properly or not. The cold air hit me hard, but it helped. It snapped something back into place in my head. The lane was still quiet, just like before, but being outside felt safer. At least out there, I could see everything. I stood on the pavement for a minute, trying to steady myself, running through what had just happened. Stress, I said under my breath. You're overtired. New place. You're hearing things. But even as I said it, I knew I didn't believe it anymore, because I hadn't just heard something. It had spoken to me, and it had known exactly what I'd done. I looked up without meaning to, straight across the lane, at the abandoned house. The upstairs window was empty again, but something about it felt different now. Not just empty, aware, like whatever had been there earlier had moved. And then, as I stood there watching, trying to decide whether to leave completely or just get in the car and drive somewhere for a few hours, the front door of my house creaked open behind me. Slowly, on its own. I turned sharply, my breath catching in my throat. The door was wide enough now to see into the hallway. Nothing stood there, no movement, no sound, just the dark interior of the house, quiet and still. But the longer I looked at it, the more I realized something was wrong. The light I'd left on inside was off. I hadn't turned it off. I knew I hadn't. And standing there on the pavement with the cold wind cutting through my coat and the empty lane stretching out on either side of me, I felt something settle in my chest that I hadn't felt before. Not confusion, not even fear. It was worse than that. It was certainty. Whatever was inside that house wasn't just something passing through. It was aware of me, and it was already changing things. I took a step back without realizing it, my eyes still fixed on the open doorway, trying to see past the darkness inside. And for just a second, I thought I saw movement. Not a full figure, not even a shape, just something shifting slightly deeper in the hallway, like someone stepping out of view, watching me from inside my own house, waiting for me to come back in. I didn't go back inside straight away. There was no way I could. I just stood there on the pavement, staring at the open front door, trying to make my body move and failing completely. It's strange how quickly your sense of control disappears. 10 minutes earlier, I'd been making coffee, thinking about emails, normal things. Now I was outside my own house, too afraid to cross the threshold, because something in me knew I wasn't walking back into an empty space anymore. I told myself I needed to leave. That should have been simple. Get in the car, drive back toward the main road, find somewhere busy, figure it out later. But even that felt wrong. Like turning my back on the house, on whatever was inside, would be worse somehow. Irrational, I know, but fear doesn't really care about logic. It just finds whatever keeps you standing still. The wind picked up along the lane, pushing bits of grit and leaves across the pavement. It made the place feel even emptier. No doors opening, no one checking what the noise was. Just that same heavy quiet pressing in from every side. And then I realized something that made my stomach drop. The door hadn't just opened. It had opened inward, which meant it hadn't been blown by the wind. Something had pulled it from inside. I actually whispered no out loud when that clicked, like saying it would undo it. It didn't. I stepped back again, putting more distance between myself and the doorway, and that's when I noticed movement further down the lane. Someone was walking toward me. Slow, steady steps, hands in pockets, head slightly down like they were watching where they were going more than where they were headed. For a second, I felt this ridiculous rush of relief. Just another person. Someone normal. Someone I could talk to, explain this to. Well, not all of it, but enough. As they got closer, I could see it was a man in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. Weathered face, flat cap, thick jacket. The kind of person you'd expect to see in a place like this. He slowed slightly when he saw me standing outside with the door open. "You all right there?" he called out, not unfriendly, but cautious. I hesitated. I didn't know how to answer that. "Yeah, I think so," I said, though my voice came out thinner than I meant it to. "Just the door." He didn't look at me. Not properly. His eyes flicked past me instead, straight to the open doorway, and I watched his expression change. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't shout or step back. It was worse than that. His face just tightened, like something had confirmed a thought he didn't want to have. "You shouldn't leave that open," he said quickly. Too quickly. "I didn't," I replied. It'll let the cold in," he cut across me, sharper now. Still not looking at me, still focused on the house. There was a pause. Then, quietly, almost under his breath, "And other things." I felt my chest tighten again. "What do you mean?" I asked. That's when he finally looked at me, properly, and whatever he saw in my face made him decide something. "You're staying there?" he said. I nodded. "For now, it's my aunt's place." Another pause, longer this time. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you hear anything in there," he said, "you ignore it." I swallowed. "I already have." He shook his head slightly. "No, I mean anything. Don't go looking. Don't answer it. And don't." He stopped himself, glancing again at the doorway. "Don't stand about outside with the door open like that." "I didn't open it," I said again, more firmly this time. I needed him to understand that part. But the way his face shifted when I said that was the moment something changed in me. Because he didn't look surprised, he looked like he'd expected it. "I know," he said quietly. That was worse than anything else. "I know." We stood there for a second, neither of us speaking. The wind moved through the lane again, rattling something loose further down the row of houses. The man took a step back, like he'd already said more than he meant to. "You best get that shut," he added, nodding toward the door, "and keep it that way." "Wait," I said quickly. "What's going on with that house?" I gestured behind me, but he didn't follow it. He didn't look past me this time. "Nothing you need to go digging into," he replied. "That's not really reassuring." "It's not meant to be." That landed harder than I expected. He adjusted his jacket, clearly ready to move on, but something in me pushed again. "I heard something upstairs," I said. "Someone walking and talking." He froze, just for a second. Then he exhaled slowly, like he'd been hoping I wouldn't say that out loud. "Right," he muttered. "You've started then." "Started what?" But he didn't answer. He just gave a small, tight nod, like he'd come to some conclusion, then stepped past me toward the door. "Go on," he said. "I'll stand here." "What?" "Go on," he repeated, firmer. "Shut it." I didn't want to. Everything in me was telling me not to walk back into that house, not to cross that line again. But standing out there wasn't helping either. And the way he said it, like it mattered, like it needed to be done now, I found myself moving before I could argue. I walked up to the door slowly, my eyes fixed on the dark hallway inside. It looked exactly the same as it had a minute ago. Empty, still. But it didn't feel empty anymore. I reached out, grabbed the handle, and pulled the door toward me. For a split second, just as it started to close, I heard something from inside. A soft sound, like movement. Close. Too close. I slammed the door shut and stepped back immediately, my heart racing again. The man nodded once. "Good," he said. I turned to him. "What is that?" He didn't answer straight away. Instead, he looked up at the house, not at the windows, not at the roof, just at it, like it was something alive. Then he said something that didn't make sense at the time. "Best thing you can do," he said quietly, "is act like it's not there." I stared at him. How am I supposed to do that? He met my eyes again. "You don't let it know you've noticed." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "What happens if I already have?" Another pause. Then, almost reluctantly, "It notices back." The silence that followed that felt heavier than anything that had come before it. He stepped away then, giving a small nod like the conversation was over. "Name's Gareth," he added, almost as an afterthought. "Shop's at the end of the road if you need anything." And with that, he walked off down the lane, not looking back. I stood there for a long time after he left. Just me, the closed door, and the weight of what he'd said sitting heavily in my chest. You don't let it know you've noticed. But I had. I'd followed the footsteps. I'd looked at the window. I'd listened to the voice. I'd answered it without even realizing. You saw me. That wasn't random. That wasn't imagination. That was something reacting, something aware. And as I stood there, replaying everything in my head, trying to piece it together, I realized something else. Something that made the whole situation feel even worse. This wasn't the first time something had been off. The door opening, the curtain moving, the footsteps, the voice. It wasn't escalating. It had already been happening. I'd just been slow to understand it. And the more I thought about that, the more one question kept coming back, over and over again. Not what was in the house, but how long it had already been there before I arrived. I didn't leave after Gareth walked away. Looking back, I should have. That would have been the sensible thing to do. Get in the car, drive until the place felt like a bad memory, and never come back. But there's something about being told not to notice something that makes it impossible to do anything else. And the worst part was, he hadn't told me to leave. He told me to stay and ignore it. That didn't feel like advice. That felt like survival. I stood there a bit longer, then finally turned back to the door. My hand hovered over the handle for a few seconds before I actually touched it. It sounds stupid, but I half expected it to move on its own again. It didn't. I opened it slowly. The hallway looked exactly as I'd left it. Light still off, coat still hanging where I'd grabbed it earlier. Nothing out of place. But the air inside felt different, heavier, like the house had settled again now that I was back. I stepped in and shut the door firmly behind me, sliding the latch across with more force than necessary. The sound echoed through the house again, but this time it didn't feel reassuring. It just felt contained, like I'd sealed myself in with it. I didn't move straight away. I just stood there in the hallway, listening. Nothing, no footsteps, no breathing, no voice. That should have made me feel better. It didn't, because now I knew that silence didn't mean anything. I forced myself to move, heading toward the kitchen first. It felt safer somehow, closer to the outside, more familiar. I checked the back door again, still shut, still bolted. The strange marks on the floor were still there too, faint but visible if you look for them. I didn't follow them this time. I didn't even look at the stairs. Instead, I made another cup of tea. Not because I wanted one, but because I needed something normal to do. Something routine. Something that didn't involve thinking about what had just happened. The kettle clicked off. Steam filled the small kitchen. For a moment it almost worked. The sound, the warmth, the familiar movements, it all grounded me just enough to breathe properly again. But then I noticed something else. The sound, or rather, the lack of it. The kettle had boiled. The tap was off. My phone wasn't playing anything. And yet the silence wasn't complete. There was a faint hum. Not electrical, not coming from any appliance I could see. It was subtle, easy to miss. But once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. It seemed to be coming from somewhere deeper in the house. Upstairs. I froze, mug halfway to my lips. No, I muttered to myself. Leave it. Garrett's voice echoed in my head. Don't go looking. I stood there for a few seconds, gripping the mug, trying to decide what to do. The rational part of me was screaming to ignore it. To sit down, put the telly on, pretend everything was fine. But another part of me, the part that had already seen too much, needed to understand. That was my mistake. I set the mug down slowly and stepped back into the hallway. The hum was clearer now, still faint but steady, and definitely coming from upstairs. I stared at the staircase. You don't need to check, I said under my breath, but I already knew I was going to. I started up the stairs again, slower this time. More careful. Like I was trying not to disturb something rather than find it. The hum didn't change, didn't get louder or quieter. It just stayed there, constant, waiting. At the top of the stairs, I paused, listening. Still nothing else. No footsteps, no voice. Just that low, quiet sound. I moved along the landing, checking each room again. My bedroom empty. The front bedroom exactly as I'd left it, curtains still drawn tight now. The box room, nothing, but the hum was still there. And it wasn't coming from any of those. That's when I noticed something I hadn't paid attention to before. At the far end of the landing, just past the box room, there was a section of wall that didn't quite match the rest. The wallpaper was slightly newer. The pattern didn't line up properly with the edges around it. It looked covered, like something had been hidden behind it. I stepped closer. The hum was strongest here. My chest tightened again. Don't, I whispered, but my hand was already moving. I pressed against the wall lightly. It gave, just slightly. That was enough. I found the edge of the wallpaper seam and peeled it back a little. The paper came away easier than it should have, revealing old wood beneath it. Not wall, a door. My stomach dropped. A small, narrow door, barely visible unless you were looking for it. And it had been deliberately covered. I hesitated for a long time. This felt different, not like the other things. Not like sounds or shadows or things that could be explained away if I tried hard enough. This was real. Something had been sealed off, and whatever was behind it, I already knew I wasn't going to like it. But I couldn't walk away either. I pushed the rest of the wallpaper aside and found the handle. It was cold, colder than anything else in the house. I pulled my hand back instinctively, then forced myself to grab it properly. "Just look," I said quietly. "Just check and leave it." I turned the handle. It stuck at first, like it hadn't been used in years. I had to push harder than I wanted to. Then suddenly, it gave. The door creaked open slowly, the sound dragging through the silence like it didn't belong there. The hum stopped. Instantly. Completely. That alone made my chest tighten. I stood there in the doorway, not moving, waiting to see if anything would happen. Nothing did. Just darkness beyond the door. I reached for the light switch inside. There wasn't one. Of course there wasn't. I pulled my phone out and turned on the torch instead. The beam cut into the darkness, revealing a small, cramped space. A room, barely big enough to stand in properly. The air inside felt wrong, stale, cold, like it hadn't moved in years. I stepped inside slowly. The floor creaked under my weight, and that's when I saw it. A bed, not a normal one. A narrow iron frame rusted at the edges. I pushed up against the wall. On it, a thin, stained mattress. No sheets, no pillows, just there. Like someone had been made to sleep there, or kept there. I felt something twist in my stomach. "What is this?" I whispered. The light shifted slightly as my hand trembled, illuminating the walls. That's when I noticed the marks, scratches, dozens of them, carved into the plaster at different heights, some long and jagged, some short and frantic, and then writing, low down, near the skirting board, repeated over and over again in uneven, cramped handwriting. I crouched slightly, bringing the light closer, and read it. "Don't let it stand at the window." The same sentence, again and again and again. Like whoever wrote it had been trying to remind themselves of something they were terrified of forgetting. My mouth went dry because I'd already seen it. The window, the figure, the marks on the glass. I backed away slowly, my heart racing again. This wasn't random. This wasn't imagination. Someone had known. Someone had seen it before me, and they'd been scared enough to hide this entire room just to forget. I turned to leave and froze, because behind me, just outside the doorway, there was a shadow, not moving, not shifting, just there, cast faintly across the landing floor, but there was nothing there to make it. My breath caught in my throat. Slowly, very slowly, I raised the light toward the doorway. The landing was empty. No one there, no movement, nothing, but the shadow had been. I knew it had. I stepped out of the room quickly, not taking my eyes off the landing as I did, and pulled the door shut behind me harder than I meant to. The sound echoed again, louder this time. Too loud, like it was being heard. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the door I just opened. The hum was gone. The silence had changed again, and this time, it didn't feel like I discovered something. It felt like I'd interrupted it. And somewhere in the house, not upstairs, not outside, somewhere close, I heard a slow, deliberate movement, like something adjusting itself, because now I knew. I didn't go back into that room. I couldn't. I just stood there on the landing for a few seconds, staring at the door I'd closed, trying to convince myself I hadn't just seen what I thought I saw. The scratches, the writing, that shadow. Don't let it stand at the window. That line kept repeating in my head, louder than anything else. I backed away slowly, step by step, until I reached the top of the stairs. I didn't turn my back on the landing. Not fully. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I did, if I gave it even a second, it would move again. Or worse, I'd catch it moving. I went downstairs quickly after that, not running, but not taking my time either. Every creak of the wood under my feet felt louder than it should have been, like the house was reacting to me now. Not just existing around me, reacting. When I reached the bottom, I exhaled hard, like I'd just come up from underwater. "Right," I muttered, more to hear my own voice than anything else. Enough. I needed distance. Not from the house. I already knew that wasn't simple, but from whatever I just found upstairs. So I went into the sitting room, switched on the television again, and turned the volume higher than I normally would. The sound filled the space, pushing back against the silence. It helped. A bit. I sat on the sofa, trying to focus on what was playing, but my attention kept drifting. Every few seconds, I found myself glancing toward the hallway, toward the stairs, waiting for something. Nothing came. No footsteps, no voice, no hum. After about 10 minutes, I started to feel ridiculous again, like I'd worked myself up over nothing, like I'd taken an old, abandoned room and let my imagination run too far with it. That's all it is, I said quietly. Old house, weird history, that's it. But even as I said it, I noticed something else. The room had gone darker, not dramatically, not like the lights had changed, just dimmer. I turned slightly and looked toward the window. The curtains were still open. I hadn't touched them since earlier, which meant I could see straight across the lane, to the abandoned house. I froze, because someone was standing in the upstairs window again, clearer this time, not just a shape, a figure, thin, still, head slightly tilted, just like before, facing directly toward my house, toward me. My chest tightened immediately, but I didn't look away this time. I couldn't. The warning from upstairs echoed in my head. Don't let it stand at the window. I stared at it, trying to figure out what I was actually seeing, trying to convince myself it was something normal. A reflection, a trick of the light, a shadow cast by something inside. But it wasn't shifting, it wasn't breaking apart the way shadows do. It was too solid, too deliberate. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The angle, the way it was positioned in the window. It wasn't looking at the house, it was looking directly at me. I could feel it, that awful, unmistakable sensation of being watched. I stood up slowly from the sofa without taking my eyes off it. My hands were shaking again, but I forced myself to stay still, to stay focused. You're not real, I said under my breath. The figure didn't move, didn't react, didn't do anything. But the longer I looked at it, the more wrong it felt. Not just because it was there, but because of how it was standing. Its head was tilted too far, its shoulders too narrow, its arms too long for the shape of the body. And then it shifted. Not a step, not a movement you could track, just different. 1 second it was near the center of the window. The next, it was slightly to the left. I blinked hard. It hadn't walked, I would have seen that. It had just changed position. My breath caught in my throat. No, I whispered. I stared at it harder, refusing to look away now. Seconds passed. Nothing. Then, again, a fraction closer to the edge of the window. Not moving. Just there. Each time I blinked, each time my focus broke even slightly, it was somewhere else. Closer. Closer to the side of the frame. Closer, disappearing from view. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't understand what I was seeing, but I understood enough. It didn't move while I looked at it. It moved when I didn't, and that meant it needed me to look away. I took a slow step backward, my eyes still locked on the figure. Then another, until I felt the edge of the sofa behind me. I didn't sit down. I just stood there, frozen, watching it. Don't look away, I whispered to myself. Don't. The television flickered, just for a second. The screen went black. Instinctively, my eyes snapped toward it, just for a moment. That was all it needed. I turned back immediately. The window was empty. The figure was gone. My chest tightened painfully. No. I rushed toward the window, my hands gripping the edge of the frame as I looked out across the lane. The upstairs window of the abandoned house was empty. Still, nothing there. But something felt worse now, because it hadn't left. It had just moved. I stepped back slowly from the window, my breath shallow, my mind racing. If it's not there, I muttered. Then where? The television flickered again behind me. I turned. The screen was black, but not off, just black. And in it, in the reflection, I saw it, standing behind me, inside the room. Not fully visible, just a dark stretched shape, too tall, too thin, head tilted, watching. My entire body locked up. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even turn around. Because I knew if I looked away from the reflection, if I turned, it would be closer. Or worse, it would already be right there. You saw me. The whisper came again, closer this time. Not from the stairs, not from upstairs, right behind me. I squeezed my eyes shut, my hands gripping the edge of the table beside me so tightly my fingers hurt. "This isn't real," I said, barely able to get the words out, but my voice shook because I didn't believe it anymore. Not after everything. Slowly, carefully, I forced my eyes open again. The television screen flickered back to life. The reflection was gone. I spun around immediately. The room was empty, completely empty. No one there, nothing behind me, no sound, no movement, just the television playing like nothing had happened. I stumbled back, my legs weak, my chest heaving as I tried to breathe properly again. And that's when I realized something else, something worse. The curtains, they were open wider now, not fully, but enough to give a clear view across the lane again, to the abandoned house, to the upstairs window. And this time, there wasn't just one figure, there were two, standing side by side, perfectly still, waiting, watching. As if, now that I'd seen it once, it didn't need to hide anymore. I didn't stay in that room. I couldn't. The second I saw the second figure in that window, something in me just broke. Not panic, not properly. It was worse than that. It was like my brain finally stopped trying to argue with what I was seeing. This wasn't stress. This wasn't imagination. Whatever was happening, it was real enough to act on. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and moved quickly into the kitchen without looking back at the window. I didn't want to give it that chance again. I didn't want to risk seeing them change position when I blinked, because I already understood the rule now. If I stopped watching, they moved. And if they moved, they got closer. I stood in the kitchen, breathing hard, trying to think. I needed something solid, something that wasn't just shadows and reflections and things I couldn't explain. Something real, something human. That's when I remembered what Gareth had said. "You've started, then." Started what? I pulled my phone out and checked the signal. Nothing. Of course. I stepped closer to the back door, holding it up near the glass, like that would somehow help. Still nothing. "Great," I muttered. "Brilliant." I needed answers, and if I couldn't call anyone, then I needed to find something in the house itself, something my aunt had left behind, something she hadn't wanted people to see. My eyes drifted toward the sitting room, toward the fireplace. I don't know why that stood out to me specifically. Maybe because it was the only part of the house that looked like it had been touched recently, cleaned, maintained. Everything else felt abandoned. But that looked deliberate. I walked in slowly, keeping my back to the hallway this time, not wanting anything behind me. The television was still on, but I muted it immediately. The sound felt wrong now, too distracting. I needed to hear everything. The room fell into silence again. I approached the fireplace carefully. It was an old one, cast iron, blackened slightly around the edges from use. The inside had been cleaned out recently, or at least more recently than the rest of the house. No ash, no debris, just emptiness. But something about it felt off. I crouched slightly, leaning in, running my hand along the inner edge, and that's when I felt it. A ridge, not part of the original structure. I pressed against it gently. Nothing happened. Then I pushed harder. There was a soft click, and a small section of the back panel shifted inward. My stomach dropped. "Of course," I whispered. There was a compartment, hidden. I hesitated for a second, then reached inside and pulled it open fully. Inside were a bundle of old papers, letters, tied together with string that had long since frayed at the edges. My hands were shaking as I picked them up. This was it. This was something real, something that could explain what was happening. I sat down on the edge of the sofa and untied the bundle carefully, my eyes flicking up every few seconds toward the window without meaning to. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself checking. The figures were still there, exactly where they'd been, watching, waiting. I forced my attention back to the letters. The top one was addressed to my aunt. The handwriting was neat, careful, dated years ago. I unfolded it slowly and began to read. "Eileen, I told you not to take him in. You don't understand what he is, and you won't until it's too late. The others saw him too. Not just in the house, in the windows, watching before anything happened, always watching first." I stopped reading, my chest tightened, watching before anything happened. I swallowed and continued. "You said he was just a boy, that he needed help. But that's not what people here believe. They've seen what happens after he appears. They've seen what comes next. If you keep him there, you need to make sure of one thing. Do not let him stand at the window." I dropped the letter onto my lap. That sentence, the same one, from the room upstairs, from the walls, repeated over and over again. My hands started shaking harder now. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. It had been written, warned, known before. I grabbed the next letter, unfolding it faster this time. He doesn't come to the door straight away. That's what people get wrong. He watches first. He learns the house, learns the people inside it. Then he finds a way in. Sometimes he doesn't need the door at all. My breath caught. I didn't want to read the rest, but I couldn't stop. If you see him outside, you must not acknowledge him. If you hear him inside, you must not respond. If you let him know you've seen him, he will come closer. The room felt smaller suddenly, colder. I looked up again without meaning to. The window, the figures, still there. But something had changed. One of them was closer to the edge of the frame. My stomach dropped. I looked back at the letter quickly. There was more. And Eileen, if he ever speaks to you, you are already too late. My hands went completely still. The whisper, you saw me. I felt something cold settle in my chest, because that meant this wasn't the beginning. I'd already crossed the line. I lowered the letter slowly, my eyes drifting back toward the window again. The two figures were still there, but now they weren't side by side anymore. One was closer, closer than before, and the other was gone. My breath hitched. No, I stood up quickly, backing away from the window, my heart racing again. If one had disappeared, then it wasn't outside anymore. It had moved. I turned slowly toward the hallway, the stairs, the rest of the house. The silence pressed in again, heavier than before, because now I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just something watching from outside. It wasn't just something moving when I looked away. It was learning, adapting, getting closer. And somewhere in the house, not upstairs, not outside, somewhere I couldn't see, I heard it again. A soft movement, followed by the faintest sound of something brushing lightly against the wall, like fingers, trailing, as it moved toward me. I didn't stay still after that. The moment I heard that sound in the hallway, something brushing against the wall, slow and deliberate, I moved. Not quietly, not carefully. I just moved, backing into the sitting room and grabbing the first solid thing I could find, which ended up being one of the heavy brass fire tools leaning against the hearth. It felt ridiculous the second I picked it up, like that would do anything. But it was something real, something I could hold. The house was silent again. Of course it was. It always went silent the moment I tried to confirm anything. I stood there, gripping the metal too tightly, my eyes fixed on the doorway into the hall, waiting for movement, waiting for something to step into view. Nothing did. Seconds passed, then a minute, then another, and slowly, against my better judgment, my breathing started to steady again. "This isn't happening," I whispered, but my voice didn't sound convincing anymore, because I knew it was. I knew it was real. I just didn't understand the rules yet, and that was the worst part. I forced myself to move again, slowly this time, stepping toward the doorway, listening for anything that might give me a clue as to where it had gone. The hallway looked empty, exactly the same. No shadows where they shouldn't be, no movement, no sound. But the air felt wrong again, that same heavy, closed feeling, like something had just passed through and left it behind. I stepped out carefully, my grip tightening around the fire tool as I glanced toward the stairs. Nothing. The landing above was still. The door to the hidden room stayed shut. Everything looked normal, too normal. And that's when I heard it. A knock. 3 times. Slow. Even, coming from the front door. My entire body froze. The sound echoed through the hallway, louder than it should have been. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even blink. Another 3 knocks, same rhythm, same spacing, exactly like the night before. Except now I knew better. "Don't answer it." Garrett's voice came back instantly, clear, firm. I took a slow step back, then another. Every instinct in me told me to stay where I was, to ignore it, to let it happen. But something else crept in alongside that fear, something quieter, more dangerous. What if it's not that? What if it's actually someone? What if you ignore it, and it's just a normal person? That thought dug in deeper than anything else, because it sounded reasonable, it sounded safe, it sounded like something I could act on. The knocks came again, this time a little louder, a little more insistent. "Hello?" A voice called from the other side of the door. Male, clear, normal. My chest tightened. "That's not," I muttered. It sounded real, too real, not like the whisper upstairs, not like anything I'd heard so far. Anyone in? The voice called again. I hesitated. Just for a second. That was all it took. I stepped forward. I'm here, I called back before I could stop myself. The silence that followed was immediate. Total. No reply, no movement, nothing. My stomach dropped, because I knew. The second the words left my mouth, I knew I'd done exactly what I wasn't supposed to do. I backed away slowly. Don't open it, I whispered to myself, but it was too late, because the handle turned, on its own, slowly. The latch clicked, and the door opened inward. The hallway beyond was empty, no one standing there, no footsteps, no sound, just the cold air from outside slipping in. I stared at the doorway, my heart pounding. Hello? I said again, quieter this time. Nothing. I took another step back, then another. The door stayed open, still. Waiting. And then a voice, behind me. You answered. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my footing. The hallway was empty, completely empty, but the voice hadn't come from the door. It had come from inside the house. Closer, much closer. My chest tightened painfully as I realized what had just happened. It hadn't been outside. It had been using the door, using the voice to make me respond, to make me acknowledge it, to let it in, and now didn't need to pretend anymore. The front door creaked slightly behind me, shifting with the wind. I didn't turn around. I couldn't, because I could feel it now, not see it, not hear it, but feel it. Close, too close, like something standing just out of sight, watching, waiting. I forced myself to move, stepping quickly into the kitchen, needing space, needing something solid around me. Think, I muttered, think. The letters, the warning. If you let him know you've seen him, he will come closer. I'd done worse than that. I'd answered it, I'd acknowledged it, I'd let it in. My hands shook as I reached for my phone again, trying for signal, trying for anything. Nothing. Of course. I turned toward the back door instinctively, thinking maybe I could just leave, just get out of the house and not come back. But something stopped me. The memory of what Gareth had said, the way he'd looked at the doorway. Don't stand outside with the door open like that. Why? Because of what was outside? Or because once it was inside, you didn't want to give it more ways to move? A sudden sound from the hallway made me flinch. A soft step, then another. Not upstairs, not far away, right there, on the same floor. Moving. I backed up against the kitchen counter, my breath shallow, my eyes fixed on the doorway. Stay where you are, I whispered to myself, but I knew it didn't matter anymore, because it wasn't staying anywhere. It was moving freely now, because I'd let it. The light in the kitchen flickered slightly, once, twice, then steady. The house went completely silent again. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. I stood there for a long time, not moving, not speaking, not even thinking properly, just waiting. And then, very slowly, from somewhere just outside the kitchen door, I heard breathing. Not loud, not exaggerated, just there. Steady, patient, close enough that I knew if I took even one step forward, I'd be standing right in front of it. I don't know how long I stood there in the kitchen. It felt like ages. Could have been minutes. Could have been longer. Time didn't really work properly anymore. I just stayed where I was, pressed back against the counter, staring at the doorway, listening to that breathing just beyond it. Slow, steady. Not trying to hide, just existing there. Like it knew I could hear it, like it wanted me to. My legs were starting to shake, but I didn't move. I didn't even blink properly. Every instinct I had was telling me the same thing. If you step forward, you'll see it, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Eventually, the breathing stopped. Just like everything else in that house, it stopped the second I focused on it. The silence came back instantly. Thick, pressing. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. Okay, I whispered, my voice barely there. Okay. I needed to move. I couldn't stay like that forever. Slowly, carefully, I pushed myself off the counter and took a step toward the doorway. Nothing happened. Another step. Still nothing. I reached the doorway and stopped, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. The hallway was empty. Of course it was. No one there. No shadow, no movement. Just that same still, quiet space like nothing had ever been there at all. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It's not real, I said again. But even now, I didn't believe it. Not after everything. I backed away from the doorway and moved toward the sitting room again, needing somewhere I could see clearly. Somewhere open. Somewhere I wouldn't feel cornered. The television was still on, playing quietly. I turned the volume up again, louder than before this time, almost drowning out my own thoughts. It helped, a little. I sat down on the sofa, gripping the edge of the cushion, forcing myself to stay still, to breathe normally, to act like everything was fine. Because that's what Gareth said, right? Act like it's not there. So that's what I did. I stared at the television, didn't look at the hallway, didn't look at the window, didn't react to every little sound. I just sat there, and for a few minutes, it worked. Nothing happened. No footsteps, no voice, no movement. Just the sound of the TV and the faint hum of the house around me. My breathing started to steady. My shoulders relaxed slightly, and for the first time since all of this started, I felt something close to normal again. That was when I made my second mistake. I let my guard down. I leaned back into the sofa, closed my eyes just for a second, just to rest them, that's all. And I must have drifted, not properly asleep. Just that shallow, half-aware state where your body relaxes before your mind catches up. Because the next thing I remember was the feeling. Something close to my face. Not touching me, but close. Close enough that I could feel the air shift. My eyes opened slowly, and at first, I didn't understand what I was looking at, because it wasn't clear, it wasn't sharp, it was just a shape, right in front of me, crouched low, head tilted, too close, too close. My breath caught in my throat, and then it moved slightly, just enough for me to see it properly. A figure, thin, long-limbed. Its face, I couldn't see it properly. Not because it was hidden, but because it didn't seem right. Like my eyes couldn't settle on it. Like it kept shifting just out of focus. But I could see enough to know it was looking directly at me, watching, studying. And then it spoke. You're quiet now. The voice was wrong. Not like before, not a whisper, not distant. It sounded closer to normal, but still off. Like it was copying something it had heard. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe properly. Every part of me had locked up because it was right there, right in front of me, close enough that if I moved even slightly, I'd touch it. You stopped answering, it said. My chest tightened painfully. It leaned closer, just a fraction, enough that I could feel something cold brush the air near my cheek. But you still see me. That snapped something in me. I jerked back suddenly, pushing myself off the sofa, scrambling away from it without thinking. My shoulder hit the wall behind me hard, but I didn't feel it properly. All I could focus on was getting distance. The figure reacted instantly. Not slowly, not carefully. It moved. Fast. Too fast. 1 second it was crouched in front of the sofa. The next it was already halfway across the room. Not running, not walking, just there. And then, gone. Completely gone. The room was empty again. The television still playing. The sofa exactly where it had been. Like nothing had happened. But I knew. I knew what I'd seen. I knew how close it had been. I slid down the wall, my legs giving out completely now, my chest heaving as I tried to breathe. That's not, I started, but my voice broke. I couldn't even finish the sentence, because there was no point anymore. There was no explaining this, no rationalizing it. It was real. And it wasn't just watching anymore. It was interacting, talking, getting closer, learning. And as I sat there, trying to steady myself, trying to think of what to do next, I realized something else. Something that made everything feel worse. It hadn't attacked me. It hadn't tried to hurt me. It had just watched, spoken, observed, like it was figuring something out, like I was part of it now. A sound from the hallway made me freeze again, soft, slow, measured, footsteps, not hiding anymore, not subtle, just walking, toward the sitting room, toward me. I didn't move, I couldn't. I just sat there on the floor, staring at the doorway, waiting. The footsteps stopped just outside, silence. Then, very gently, something tapped against the doorframe. Once, twice, 3 times, the same rhythm, the same knock, but this time, it wasn't asking to come in. It already had. I don't know how I managed to stand up after that. My legs didn't feel like mine anymore. They were shaking so badly, I had to use the wall to pull myself up, one hand dragging along the plaster like I needed something solid just to stay upright. The doorway. That was all I could see, the place where it had just been, where it still might be. I waited. Nothing moved. No shadow, no sound, just that same heavy silence pressing in again. It didn't come into the room. That was the first thing that struck me. It had stopped at the doorway, tapped the frame, then waited, like it was testing something or expecting something. My chest tightened again as a thought crept in. It wants you to respond, the same pattern, The door, the voice, the knock, every time, it gave me something and waited to see what I'd do. I swallowed hard. Not this time, I whispered. I stayed where I was, didn't move toward the door, didn't answer, didn't react. Seconds passed, then a minute, then longer. Eventually, the pressure eased. Not gone, just shifted, like it had moved away again. I didn't relax, I couldn't. But I understood something now. It didn't just come at me, it pulled me in, waited for me to step toward it, to answer it, to acknowledge it. And every time I did, it got closer. I needed something that didn't rely on that, something that gave me control. The letters, the hidden room, my aunt. There was more to this house than just whatever was moving through it. There had to be. I forced myself to move again, slower this time, keeping my breathing steady, my focus sharp. If she knew, I muttered, then she left something else. Something she couldn't get rid of, something she hid. My eyes moved through the room, scanning everything again. The fireplace, the sofa, the old cabinets, nothing. Then the floor. I don't know what made me look at it properly. Maybe it was the angle. Maybe it was the way the rug didn't sit quite right. But something felt off. I stepped closer and nudged the edge of it with my foot. It shifted more than it should have. I crouched slowly, pulling it back, and there it was, a hatch. Small, square, set into the floorboards. My stomach dropped. Of course, I whispered. Another hidden space. Another place something had been kept, or hidden, or locked away. My hands hovered over it for a second. Everything in me screamed not to open it, because I already knew. Whatever was happening in this house, it wasn't just starting now. It had been happening for a long time, and the more I uncovered, the closer I got to it. But I couldn't stop. Not now. I grabbed the edge of the hatch and pulled. It resisted at first, then gave with a sharp crack as the seal broke. A rush of cold air came up immediately, thicker than anything else in the house, damp, stale, wrong. I recoiled slightly, covering my mouth instinctively. The smell hit a second later, old, rotting, not strong enough to be recent, but enough to make my stomach turn. I grabbed my phone again, switching the torch on and angled it downward. Steps, narrow, wooden, leading into darkness. A cellar, or something like it. I stared down at it, my chest tight, my heart already racing again. "Don't," I whispered, but I was already moving, one step down, then another. The wood creaked loudly under my weight, echoing in the confined space. The air grew colder with each step, thicker, harder to breathe. By the time I reached the bottom, my hands were shaking again. The light from my phone cut through the darkness in a narrow beam, revealing just enough. Stone walls, rough, uneven, moisture clinging to the surface, and in the center, a space, cleared, deliberate. I stepped forward slowly, and that's when I saw it. A chair, small, wooden, set facing the wall. Not turned randomly, not knocked over, placed, carefully, like someone had been made to sit there. My stomach twisted. No, I moved closer, my light shaking as I raised it. The wall in front of the chair was covered in marks, not scratches this time, not frantic, controlled, repeated, tallies, dozens of them, grouped, counted, days or nights. I didn't know which was worse. My chest tightened painfully. I stopped, I say it, but the thought was already there. Someone had been kept here, not just hidden, not just forgotten, kept. My light shifted slightly, and that's when I saw the chain, fixed into the wall, rusting, broken at one end, but still attached. I staggered back a step, my breath catching in my throat. Oh my God. This wasn't just a strange house. This wasn't just something moving through it. Something had happened here. Something human. Something deliberate. Something cruel. And suddenly, the story from the letters felt different. The boy, the warnings, the fear. What if he hadn't been the thing people thought he was? What if he'd been trapped here? I turned slowly, my heart pounding again. The air felt heavier now, like the space itself was reacting, like I'd uncovered something that had been buried for a reason. I didn't know, I whispered. But the words felt empty, because something else did, something that had been here all along. A sound behind me made me freeze. Not upstairs, not distant, close, right at the top of the steps. A soft shift, like weight settling on wood. My blood ran cold. I didn't turn around. I couldn't, because I already knew. It wasn't alone anymore. Not just the thing from the window, not just the thing from the hallway. This place, this house, it wasn't just haunted, it was layered, built on something, and I just stepped into the center of it. The chain rattled, soft. Just once. I flinched hard, my light jerking toward it. It hadn't moved, not properly, but the sound, it had come from right next to me. My chest tightened. "I'm not staying here," I whispered. I turned and froze, because standing at the top of the cellar stairs, blocking the way out, was a figure. Not the same as before, not tall, not stretched. This one was smaller, thin still, head tilted slightly to one side, watching, and for the first time I could see its face, or enough of it, pale, too pale, eyes dark, empty, but focused directly on me. My breath caught, because I knew this wasn't the thing that had been following me through the house. This was something else, something older, something that had been here first. And as it stared down at me, it spoke, not like the other voice, not mocking, not curious, just flat. "You found it." The chain rattled again behind me, and this time I knew I wasn't the only one down there anymore. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was trapped between two things I didn't understand. One at the top of the stairs, one somewhere behind me in the dark. And for the first time since all of this started, I realized I wasn't dealing with just one presence. The figure at the top of the stairs didn't move. It just stood there, blocking the exit, its head slightly tilted, like it was trying to understand me rather than threaten me. That somehow made it worse, because it didn't feel aggressive. It felt aware. "You found it," it said again. The voice was flat, empty, not like the other one, not mocking, not curious, just stating something, like it had been waiting. My throat tightened. "What is this?" I managed to get out. The figure didn't answer. Behind me, the chain shifted again, longer this time, dragging slightly against the wall. My chest tightened painfully. I didn't turn around. I couldn't, because I knew if I looked back, I'd see it. The other one, the thing that had followed me, that had spoken, that had been learning, and somehow that felt worse than what was standing in front of me. "Please," I said, my voice shaking now, "just move." The figure at the top of the stairs didn't react straight away. It just stood there, watching. Then slowly, it tilted its head further and said something that made everything inside me go cold. "You let it in." My breath caught. The chain behind me rattled sharply. Closer now. "Stop," I whispered. I didn't know who I was talking to, either of them, both of them. "Please just stop." The figure didn't move, but its eyes, they shifted slightly, past me toward the darkness behind. And for a moment, just a moment, something changed in its expression. Not fear, not anger, something like recognition. "You shouldn't have answered," it said. And then it stepped aside, just enough to open the path. My body reacted before my brain did. I moved, fast, up the stairs, past it, not touching it, not looking at it, just moving. I didn't stop until I reached the hallway, stumbling slightly as I hit the top step and grabbed onto the wall to steady myself. The house felt different again. Wrong, louder, like something had shifted completely. I didn't look back down the stairs. I didn't want to see if it had followed. I just ran, straight for the front door. I didn't care anymore. Didn't care what Gareth had said. Didn't care about rules or patterns or anything else. I just needed to get out. I grabbed the handle and pulled. The door opened instantly. Cold air rushed in. I stepped outside without hesitation, my breath coming fast, my heart racing as I stumbled onto the pavement. The lane stretched out in front of me. Dark now. Properly dark. The kind of darkness that doesn't just sit there, it presses in. No lights in the windows, no movement, no sound, just the wind. I turned, looking down the street, trying to orient myself, trying to figure out which way to go. And that's when I realized something was wrong. The lane looked longer, not physically, just wrong, like it stretched further than it should. The houses, they didn't look quite the same. The doors, the windows, slightly off, like copies of themselves. My chest tightened. No, I turned back toward my house. It was the same as before. Door open, dark inside. But something about it felt further away now, like I'd stepped out of place slightly. I turned again, scanning the lane, and then I saw him, Gareth, standing further down the road near the shop, just standing there, facing me. Relief hit me immediately. "Gareth," I called out. My voice echoed slightly. Too much. He didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there watching. I took a step toward him, then another. "Gareth, I need." He raised his hand, slowly, not waving, just stopping me. And then he shook his head, once, firm. My stomach dropped. "What?" I called out. Still nothing, just that same motion. "Don't." My chest tightened. "Why?" He pointed, not at me, past me. back toward the house, my breath caught. No, I whispered. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't need to, because I already knew. Slowly, I did it anyway. The front door was still open, but the darkness inside it wasn't empty. Something was standing there, just inside the doorway, watching me, the taller one. The one from the reflection, from the hallway, from the voice. Head tilted, still, waiting. My heart started pounding again. I took a step back instinctively, then another, trying to move away from it, toward Gareth. But when I turned back, he was further away. Not walking, not moving, just further. The distance had changed. My chest tightened painfully. No, I spun again. The house was closer, the figure in the doorway, still there, still watching. And now, closer, without moving. I staggered back again, panic rising properly now. This wasn't right. None of this was right. You can't leave, a voice said, not from the house, not from behind me, everywhere, quiet, close. You answered. I covered my ears instinctively. Stop, just stop. The lane stretched again, the houses shifted slightly, the darkness deepened, and then every door along the terrace opened at once. The sound hit me all at the same time, wood creaking, locks shifting, a line of open doorways. Black inside, empty, except they weren't empty. Shapes standing in each one, thin, still watching. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't even process what I was seeing. Because now it wasn't just one or two, it was everywhere. Every house, every doorway, watching, waiting. And I realized something then. Something that made everything worse. This place, this lane, it wasn't just where it happened. It was part of it. And I hadn't stepped outside to escape. I'd stepped further in. I don't remember deciding to move. 1 second I was standing there in the middle of the lane, surrounded by those open doorways, those shapes watching me from every house. And the next I was running. Not in a straight line. Not toward anything specific. Just away. My shoes hit the pavement hard, echoing louder than they should have, like the sound didn't belong in that place. The wind cut across the lane again. Colder now, sharper, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except getting distance. Getting away from the house, from the doorways, from the things standing inside them. But no matter how far I ran, nothing changed. The lane didn't end. It didn't connect to anything else. It just continued. The same houses, the same doors, the same black openings, over and over again. My chest burned as I slowed, stumbling slightly, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. This isn't real, I gasped. But I'd already said that too many times, and it had never helped. I turned in place, scanning everything, trying to find something, anything, that made sense. That's when I saw him again. Gareth, closer this time, standing just a few meters away, exactly where I'd been trying to reach him before, like the distance had corrected itself. I stared at him, my chest heaving. "Help me," I said, my voice cracking. "Please, what is this?" He didn't answer straight away. He just looked at me, properly this time. And there was something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Not just concern, not just fear, something heavier, like guilt. "You shouldn't have come here alone," he said quietly. "I didn't know," I snapped. "No one told me anything." "We don't," he replied. That made something in me snap. "Why not?" I demanded. "Why wouldn't you warn people?" His jaw tightened slightly. "Because it listens," he said. The words landed heavier than anything else he'd said so far. I swallowed hard. "What listens?" Gareth glanced past me briefly, toward the houses, toward the open doors, then back at me. "All of it," he said. My stomach dropped. "That doesn't make any sense." "It doesn't have to," he replied. "It just has to notice you." My chest tightened again. "It already has," I said. "I know." The way he said that, like it confirmed something, made everything feel worse. "What is it?" I asked, quieter now. "The boy? The thing in the house? What is it?" Gareth hesitated. For the first time he looked unsure. Then he exhaled slowly. "It started with him," he said. "Or at least, that's what people tell themselves." "The boy?" I asked. He nodded. "Silas Wren." The name settled in my chest like something I'd already known. "The letters," I said. "He was living in the house." "He was kept there," Gareth corrected. That word, kept. It hit harder. "Why?" Gareth looked away briefly. "Because people thought he was wrong," he said. "Not right in the head." Said he wandered, turned up places he shouldn't be, watching people, standing outside windows at night. My chest tightened. "That's exactly what." "I know," Gareth cut in. Silence fell between us for a second. The wind moved through the lane again, carrying that same low, empty sound with it. But that wasn't the worst of it, Gareth continued. People started blaming things on him. Livestock going missing, people hearing things, seeing things, and then… He stopped. And then what? I pressed. His expression darkened. People started disappearing. My breath caught. Disappearing? He nodded. Not all at once, not obvious, just gone. And every time, someone would say they'd seen him first, outside, watching, just standing there. My mind raced. The window, I muttered. Gareth nodded again. That's why they started boarding them up, closing everything off, trying not to give him a way to look in. But he was just a kid, I said. That doesn't make sense. No, Gareth agreed quietly. It doesn't. Another pause. Then, so they locked him away. The words came out flat, heavy, certain. I felt my stomach drop again. The cellar, I said. Gareth didn't react to the word, but the way his eyes shifted, that was enough. They kept him down there, I said slowly. Didn't they? He didn't answer. But he didn't need to. Jesus, I whispered. They said it was for everyone's safety. Gareth continued. Said it was the only way to stop whatever was happening. And did it? I asked. Gareth looked back at me. No. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then what happened? I asked. Gareth hesitated again. Then, one winter the power went out, he said. Storm came in, roads blocked, no one could get in or out of the village for days. My chest tightened. They forgot about him. The words came out before I could stop them. Gareth didn't correct me. They didn't mean to, he said, not at first, but by the time anyone remembered, he trailed off. I didn't need him to finish. I already knew. That's what's in the house, I said. Gareth shook his head. No. That confused me. Then what is? His expression shifted again, darker. He died, Gareth said. That part's true. But, Gareth glanced toward the houses again, the open doors, the shapes inside them. But people kept seeing him, he said. My chest tightened. After, he nodded. Not moving, not speaking, just standing, watching, same as before. The windows, I whispered. Yes, I swallowed hard. So it's him? Gareth shook his head again. No. That hit harder than anything else. What do you mean, no? I asked. Gareth stepped slightly closer, lowering his voice. At first, that's what everyone thought, he said. That it was his ghost, that he'd come back, that he was angry. And now, Gareth held my gaze. Now we think it's something else. My chest tightened. Something that learned him, he said. The words felt wrong. What does that mean? Gareth didn't look away. It watched him, he said. Same way it watches everyone else. Learned how he stood, how he moved, how he looked at people. A cold feeling spread through my chest. And then when he died, it didn't leave, Gareth finished. The wind shifted again. The doors along the lane creaked slightly. The shapes inside them didn't move, but I could feel it now. All of it. Watching. It needed a shape, Gareth continued. Something people would recognize, something they'd react to. My breath caught, so it used him, Gareth nodded. And the more people noticed it, the more it spread. My chest tightened painfully. The houses, I said. The lane, Gareth corrected. The place itself. Silence fell again. And then I understood. Not fully, but enough. That's why you don't talk about it, I said. Gareth nodded. That's why we don't look, he added. My stomach dropped, and I did both. Gareth didn't respond. He didn't need to. I looked around slowly. The open doors, the shapes, the house behind me, the thing in the doorway. This isn't just about the house, is it? I said quietly. Gareth shook his head. No. Then what is it about? He hesitated, then said something that made everything worse. It's about being noticed. My breath caught. And once it notices you? He didn't finish. He didn't have to, because I already knew. I'd answered, I'd looked, I'd reacted, and now it wasn't just in the house anymore. It was everywhere, and it wasn't hiding. Not from me. Not anymore. I don't remember deciding to go back. But somehow, I was standing in front of the house again. Ashcombe Lane hadn't changed, or maybe it had, and I just couldn't tell anymore. The doors along the terrace were still open. The shapes were still standing there, watching, always watching. But Gareth, he was gone. 1 second he'd been standing there, explaining everything like it mattered. And the next, nothing, like he'd never been there at all. Gareth, I called out. My voice didn't carry properly. It felt swallowed, like the air itself didn't want to let it travel. No answer, of course not. I turned slowly back toward the house. The front door was still open. The tall figure still stood just inside, head tilted, waiting. My chest tightened again. You can't leave. That voice. everywhere, quiet, close. I clenched my fists, trying to steady myself. "Then what do you want?" I said out loud. No answer. The wind moved again, the doors creaked, and for the first time, the shapes inside them shifted, not walking, not stepping, just adjusting. Closer to the thresholds, closer to the outside. My breath caught. No. I stepped back instinctively, but the ground didn't feel right, like it wasn't solid, like it didn't quite exist the way it should. The lane stretched again. The houses leaned slightly inward, and then the tall figure in my doorway moved. Not like before, not in those impossible jumps. This time, it stepped forward. Slow, deliberate, one foot crossing the threshold, then the other, out onto the pavement. My heart slammed against my ribs, because that hadn't happened before. It had always stayed inside, always waited. But now, it was coming out. "You answered," it said again, the voice clearer now, stronger, like it didn't need to hide behind anything anymore. I shook my head, backing away. No, I didn't mean, but it didn't care. It kept moving, slow, steady, not rushing, not chasing, just closing the distance. And behind it, inside the house, I saw movement. More shapes, not just one, not just two, dozens. Shifting in the darkness, pressing toward the doorway. My chest tightened painfully. "They're coming out," I whispered. The thought hit me all at once. The window, the rule. Don't let it stand at the window. Because once it watched, once it learned, once it was noticed, it didn't stay outside anymore. It came in, and then it came out into everything. I turned and ran. Not down the lane this time. Not toward the shop, not toward anything familiar. Just away from the houses, toward the edge of the village. Toward the moor. The ground shifted under my feet as I ran, the pavement giving way to gravel, then dirt, then uneven grass. The wind hit harder out there, colder, sharper, cutting through my coat like it wasn't even there. I didn't stop, didn't look back. I didn't want to see how close it was, because I knew, if I looked, it would be closer than it should be. The village faded behind me, the houses, the doors, the shapes, all of it swallowed by the dark. But the feeling didn't go, that weight, that awareness. It was still there, still with me. I slowed eventually, my breath ragged, my legs burning as I stumbled to a stop near the edge of the moor. It was pitch black out there, no lights, no landmarks, just open space, endless, empty. I bent forward slightly, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. "Okay," I gasped, "okay." This was better, this had to be better. Nothing around me, nothing to watch from, nothing to hide in, just open land, just me. And for a moment, a brief, fragile moment, it felt like I'd escaped. Then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Not fast, not running. Slow, measured, the same pace, always the same pace. My chest tightened again. No, I turned slowly. The darkness stretched behind me, but it wasn't empty, a shape, standing there, too far to see clearly, but close enough. Closer than it should be. It hadn't chased me. It hadn't needed to. It had just followed. I took a step back. It didn't move. But something about it changed, like it was already closer. My breath caught. "This isn't real," I whispered. But I was past that now. I knew better. I turned again and froze. Because ahead of me, out on the moor, there were more. Shapes standing, scattered across the darkness. Not moving, not approaching. Just there, waiting. My chest tightened painfully. No. I spun back again, the one behind me, still there, still watching. And then, slowly, more shapes appeared, to the sides, closer, not walking into view, just existing where they hadn't been before. Surrounding me, my breathing turned shallow, panicked now. I couldn't move, couldn't run, because there was nowhere left to go. The village behind me, the moor ahead, and everywhere. Them. "You noticed," the voice said. "Not from one place, from all of them, layered, overlapping. You answered." I covered my ears, shaking my head. "Stop! Please just stop!" But the shapes didn't move, didn't need to, because they were already close enough, already everywhere. And then, the one in front of me stepped forward, slow, deliberate, head tilting slightly, just like before, just like all of them. And as it did, I realized something that made everything worse. They weren't surrounding me, not completely. There was still one gap, one direction that wasn't blocked. Behind me, back toward the house, my stomach dropped. "No, you can go back," the voice said. Soft, patient, like it was offering something, like it was giving me a choice. But it wasn't a choice. Not really, because I understood now, this wasn't about chasing me. This wasn't about trapping me. It was about guiding me, keeping me inside it, keeping me where it could watch, learn, grow. My chest tightened as I slowly turned. the village, the house, the open door. Still there, still waiting. And I knew that was the only place left I could go, because no matter where I ran, it was already there, already watching, already closer than it should be. And somehow, somewhere in all of this, that house wasn't the center of it anymore. I was. I don't remember walking back. I don't remember making the choice, but I was there again, standing in front of the house, the door still open, the dark inside still waiting. The village behind me had gone quiet again, not empty, never empty, just still, watching. The shapes in the other doorways hadn't disappeared. They just settled, like they were waiting to see what I'd do next. And I understood something then. This wasn't about running anymore. It wasn't about escape. It was about ending something, or at least trying to. Because if I kept reacting, if I kept answering, if I kept letting it move closer, it would never stop. It would just keep learning, keep growing, keep spreading. I stepped forward, back into the house. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air changed again, heavier, colder, like I'd stepped into something that was already aware I'd returned. The door closed behind me, not slowly, not dramatically, just shut. I didn't turn around. I didn't check it, because it didn't matter anymore. The hallway stretched ahead of me, darker than before, and I could feel it, not in one place, not in one room, everywhere. Watching, listening, waiting. "All right," I said quietly. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "You want me here?" No response, but the air shifted slightly, like something had acknowledged it. I swallowed hard. "Then I'm not doing this your way." The words felt stupid, small, pointless, but I meant them, because I finally understood the pattern, the windows, the watching, the way it moved when I didn't look, the way it used what I saw, what I recognized. It needed that. It needed me to see it, to understand it, to give it shape. And there was only one place that mattered for that, the upstairs room, the window. I turned and walked toward the stairs, slowly, deliberately, not rushing this time, not reacting, just moving. The house stayed quiet, no footsteps, no whispers, no sudden movements. Just that same heavy presence following me without needing to be heard. Each step creaked under my weight as I climbed, but I didn't stop, didn't look back, didn't hesitate. Because if I did, I knew it would take advantage of that. At the top of the stairs, I paused. Not because I was scared, because I needed to be sure. Don't let it stand at the window. That wasn't just a warning, it was a rule, a boundary, and maybe, just maybe, something that could be used. I walked toward the front bedroom. The door was already open. Of course it was. I stepped inside. The room was darker now. The curtain pulled back just enough to expose the window again. The same narrow gap, the same view across the lane. And there, in the glass, the reflection. Not behind me this time, in front, standing between me and the window. My breath caught. It wasn't clear, not fully, but I could see enough. The tall shape, the long limbs, the tilted head, facing me, watching. "You came back," it said. The voice was clearer now, more stable, less broken, like it had been practicing. I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring, not reacting, not giving it anything. The shape shifted slightly, not moving, just adjusting, like it was trying to become clearer. "You see me," it said. I stayed silent, its head tilted further. "You understand now, still?" Nothing from me. The air grew colder. The pressure increased, like it was pushing, trying to force something out of me. A reaction, a word, anything. But I didn't give it, because now I knew. That's how it worked. That's how it got closer. "You can't ignore me," it said. That was new, not curious, not observational. That sounded frustrated. Good. I took a slow step forward. The shape in the reflection didn't move, didn't retreat, but something about it flickered, unstable. "You need me to look," I said quietly, the first words I'd spoken, but not the way it wanted. Not reactive, not afraid, controlled. The shape shifted again. "You already did." I shook my head slightly. "No," I said. "I noticed you." Another step forward. The cold intensified immediately. The glass in the window began to fog slightly, but I didn't stop. I listened, I continued. I answered. My voice steadied, but I don't have to keep doing that. The shape flickered harder now, edges breaking slightly, like it couldn't hold itself properly. "You can't stop seeing me," it said. I nodded. "No." Another step. Closer to the window, closer to the reflection, "But I can stop helping you." That changed something. The air tightened. The room felt smaller, more contained, like it was reacting, like it didn't like that. "You don't understand," it said. The voice sharper now, less stable. "I think I do," I replied. And then I moved, quickly, grabbing the curtain, pulling it fully across the window, blocking the view completely. The effect was immediate. The room dropped into near darkness, reflection vanished, the cold spiked sharply, and the voice changed. Not words, not sentences, just sound. Distorted, fractured, like something breaking apart. I stepped back, breathing hard, my hands shaking, the air pulsed, the walls creaked, the house, it reacted, violently. "You," the voice cut in and out, unstable. "You can't." The sound fractured again, like it couldn't hold itself together without the window, without the view, without being seen. I backed toward the door slowly, keeping my eyes on the curtain, not looking behind me, not giving it another angle, not letting it pull me back into it. The house groaned around me, the floor shifted slightly under my feet. The pressure in the air built, then stopped. Silence, complete, sudden. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even think, because I knew this part mattered. The next few seconds, the reaction, the response, nothing happened. No voice, no movement, no presence, just silence. I stepped back again, then again, reaching the doorway, still nothing. I turned carefully and walked out onto the landing. The house felt empty, not quiet, not still, empty, like something had been there and now wasn't. I stood there, my chest rising and falling slowly, my body still tense, still waiting for something to happen. But nothing did, and for the first time, I felt something shift. Not fear, not panic, something else, something like control. But as I took another step away from the room, something in the back of my mind whispered a question I couldn't ignore. If it needed the window, if it needed to be seen, then what? Had I just stopped? And more importantly, where did it go? I didn't stay in the house much longer after that. Not because something chased me out. Not because anything dramatic happened. That's the part that still unsettles me the most. Nothing happened. I went downstairs slowly, expecting something, anything, to change again. A sound, a movement, that voice. But the house felt empty, properly empty. The air was still. The pressure was gone. Even the cold had softened slightly, like whatever had been holding itself in that space had lifted. I stood in the hallway for a long time, just listening, waiting, but nothing came. Eventually, I opened the front door. This time, it didn't move on its own. It didn't creak open or resist me. It just openly. The lane outside looked like it had before. No stretched distance, no shifting houses, no open doors. Everything was closed again, still, quiet, like nothing had ever happened. I stepped outside cautiously, my eyes scanning everything. The abandoned house across the road, the upstairs window, empty. No figure, no movement, no feeling of being watched. Just a broken, empty building. I exhaled slowly, my chest finally loosening for the first time since I arrived. "Okay," I whispered. But even then, even standing there in the open air, I didn't feel safe. Not completely, because I understood something now. Just because it wasn't visible didn't mean it was gone. I didn't go back inside. I didn't pack properly. I grabbed what I could carry quickly, my phone, my bag, my keys, and left everything else behind. I didn't lock the door. I didn't look back. I just got in the car and drove. Out of the village, off the moor, back onto roads that felt real again, with streetlights, with people, with movement. I didn't stop driving until I reached the motorway. And even then, I kept checking the mirrors. Not because I thought something was following me physically, but because I couldn't shake the feeling that something had noticed me in a way I couldn't undo. I stayed in a hotel that night, didn't sleep, didn't turn the lights off. Just sat on the edge of the bed, replaying everything in my head over and over again, trying to make sense of it, trying to convince myself I'd ended it, that whatever had been in that house, whatever had been watching, was contained, gone, stopped, by closing the curtain, by blocking the window. That's what I told myself. That's what I needed to believe. The next morning, I called my mom, told her I wasn't going back, didn't explain why, didn't try to. She didn't ask. That alone told me more than anything else could have. A week later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but I did. It was someone from the village, didn't say their name, just said they were calling about the house. My chest tightened immediately. "What about it?" I asked. There was a pause. Then, "It's been closed up again," they said. "What do you mean?" "The windows," they replied, "boarded, properly this time." I swallowed, and the door, another pause. Then, still open. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Has anyone been back inside? I asked. No, they said quickly. No one's going in there now. That didn't reassure me. Why not? The line went quiet for a second, then because something's been knocking, my grip tightened on the phone. When? Every night, they said. The words came out flat, certain, always the same. My chest tightened painfully. How? 3 slow knocks, evenly spaced, the same pattern. I didn't say anything. I couldn't, because I already knew. It's not on the front door, they added. My stomach dropped. Where then? Another pause. Longer this time, then different houses. The room around me felt suddenly smaller. What? It moves, they said. One night it's one house, next night it's another, but it always starts the same way. 3 knocks, slow, patient waiting. My mouth went dry. Has anyone answered? I asked. Silence. Then 1. That was enough. I didn't ask anything else. I didn't want to know. I moved after that. Left leads, new flat, different city, somewhere busier, somewhere louder, somewhere with people around all the time. I don't stay on the ground floor anymore. I don't leave my curtains open at night, and I don't answer the door unless I know exactly who's on the other side. Even then, I checked twice. For a while, everything was fine, normal, quiet. I almost convinced myself I'd left it behind, that it had stayed there. In that house, on that lane, on that moor. But things don't work like that. Not really. It started small, subtle, easy to ignore, a reflection in the television screen that didn't quite match the room. A shadow in the corner of my eye that disappeared when I turned. The feeling, that same feeling of being watched. Not constantly, not obvious, just sometimes, just enough to remind me. And then, last night, it happened again. I was in bed, lights off, room quiet, just starting to fall asleep. When I heard it, a sound, soft, close, from the window. My chest tightened immediately. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even think, because I knew exactly what it was. A faint shift, like something pressing lightly against the glass. Then 3 slow knocks, even, patient, right beside my head. I squeezed my eyes shut, my entire body locking up again. Don't answer it, I whispered to myself, but I didn't need to answer, because this time, it wasn't asking to come in. It was already there. And as I lay there, frozen, trying not to react, trying not to acknowledge it, I felt something change. Not in the room, not in the sound, in me. Because I realized something I hadn't before, something worse than anything that had happened in that house. I didn't need to look at it anymore. I already knew exactly where it was standing, right outside the window, watching, waiting, and learning what I do next. If this story stirred something within you, be it a flicker of unease, curiosity, or deep reflection, please leave a comment and share your thoughts. What do you think is truly going on? Have you ever experienced a sense of uncanny familiarity like that before? If you have similar stories of your own, don't hesitate to share them. Who knows? Maybe we are all touching upon the same hidden frequency. And if you want to keep exploring these dramatic, mysterious, and multi-layered tales, please hit the like button to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming chapters. Wishing you a truly peaceful night where everything is still in the gentlest way, and may there always be a spark of warm light somewhere waiting for you to find it.